Hi, this is Peter Woolfolk. With 2022 behind us, let me say thank you so very, very much. First, to all of our great guests that provide the exceptional content for this podcast, and to our ever-growing number of listeners and supporters of the Public Relations Review podcast. At the close of 2022, we now have listeners in over 2,000 cities located in 123 countries around the world. Here in the U.S., this podcast has been voted one of the best PR podcasts in America. Because we continue to provide skilled professionals that can present you with excellent content on a wide range of PR topics and the large listener downloads of usable information we deliver, this podcast was awarded a Best PR Podcast trophy from the Nashville chapter of the Public Relations Society of America. We have also won a Best Business Podcast trophy from the American Business Association. I will continue to seek some of the best professionals from all across America and a few from foreign nations to bring you the kind of professional information that is useful to your business and to expand your knowledge about public relations. These professionals are delighted to share this information with you, and it appears from our continued growth that you enjoy listening to them. So once again, thank you so very much for being a listener. Please let your friends and colleagues know about the Public Relations Review podcast. We are available on Amazon, Apple, Audible, Spotify, Google, iHeart, and another 30 or more sites, making us available worldwide. So thank you. And now on to the podcast.
Welcome. This is the Public Relations Review podcast, a program to discuss the many facets of public relations with seasoned professionals, educators, authors, and others. Now, here is your host, Peter Woolfolk.
Welcome to the Public Relations Review podcast and to our listeners all across America and around the world. Now, today we will be taking our first look into investor and stakeholder public relations and telling their story. So the question, first, what are the keys to success in investor and stakeholder relations? And number two, what are the methods and platforms used to achieve the success? My guest today began his storytelling career as a Pulitzer Prize-nominated Associated Press photojournalist traveling the world telling human stories. He has built and sold a public relations firm and worked with one of the most creative full-service agencies in the western United States and helped propel a publicly traded multinational company from a $400 million IPO to $5 billion in market capitalization. Now, through GH Strategies, he works with global brands to create strategic marketing campaigns that propel companies forward. He has a bachelor's degree from Cal State Long Beach, an MBA from the University of Phoenix, and is a graduate of the Executive Leadership Program at Columbia Universities and has studied in other postgraduate programs. In 2021, he was named the Communications Strategist of the Year by Corporate Livewire and one of 30 Innovators to Watch by Silicon Review. In 2018, he was named the most influential marketing executive in Nevada by Acquisitions International and other accolades. He earned his accreditation in public relations in 2017. So joining me today from the great state of Nevada is Ira Gostin, APR President of GH Strategies. So thank you for being our guest today, Ira.
Hi, Peter. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
So let's begin by telling you, or asking you, I should say, to provide sort of an overview of investor and stakeholder public relations, and perhaps how is it different than just normal public relations, considering that you're dealing maybe with companies that are on the stock market?
So, yeah, it's pretty similar to traditional public relations, which, as you know, has about 10,000 different pieces to it. What we do is we work with public companies in the mining space. So we're very niche oriented, and we have different rules that we have to deal with. So not only do we have to deal with FTC things, but we have to deal with the SEC as far as being a promoter for public companies. But at the end of the day, it's pretty simple we identify the audience and we identify what our audience cares about, and then we figure out a way to build that story and tell that story for that client. And it may take a little bit different form or some turns here and there, but what we practice is stakeholder engagement. So we're looking at ways to communicate the story and actually engage with those shareholders or stakeholders.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you say what they care about, and let's stick with the mining area. So when you are looking for their interest and what they care about, what are you finding are those things at the top that they really need to know?
So there's different kind of categories. You may have an investor who only is looking at gold companies. And if the client has gold and other metals, they don't want to deal with that. If they're in a jurisdiction that investor doesn't feel comfortable with, that's going to be an issue. So we really sometimes we send surveys out to, we'll send out a survey on behalf of the company and ask straight out, what do you look at when you invest in a company? And it's a little bit different from traditional PR because the product that we're trying to help promote is actually the shares of the company, not a physical asset. So, we really try to identify what are the key things in the story to get to that audience. And that makes it pretty interesting for us because we're really having to do our homework.
Now, in terms of mining, does that mean that they want to know how many products or let's say gold that they're selling, or what sort of things do you find that they're really interested in knowing about?
So a lot of companies, ESG, environment, social governance, that's the big thing right now. And so, I find that for us to have impact into these stakeholder groups, we really need to talk about the company. Every company can talk about their production. How many ounces of gold or how many ounces of silver, how many ounces of lithium are they going to produce a year? But what we try to do is humanize the company a little bit, talk about the CEO, do interviews, social media with the CEO, build that trust between that shareholder and the company through the CEO's connection to them. So that's where we really try to build that. So if a shareholder is concerned about a jurisdiction, we'll try to talk about that and help de-risk it for them.
Now, when you say jurisdiction, you mean where the actual mine is located or where the headquarters is located? What?
Yeah.
Okay.
So where the mine is, where is the mining done? So mining happens all over the world. Our mining clients right now are in Canada and the U.S., but there are companies that have, mining operations in other countries that people feel are too risky, so they may not invest in that company because they don't like the risk profile. So it's all part of the pieces. It's a big puzzle when we come up with our strategy of what are the things, and it's like any other traditional PR. What's the headline? What's the impact? What's important for us to talk about?
Now, just let's say going back to a goal, I believe it was, and you say that in some countries they feel that it might be too risky. What risk are they concerned about? Government takeover, and also how do you still get the message out that it's still a good company to invest in?
That's where we spend a lot of, everybody has their own fears or, identified risks. There are certainly, I know companies that are exploring, trying to develop mines in the U.S. Nevada is a much easier jurisdiction than, say, California. So when you have something there's a risk, that's where that CEO being strong and communicative and telling the company story can really help a company position itself. And At that point, we look at, okay, well, what's the best way for us to tell this story? What are the tools that we have available to us that we can help that CEO tell the story of their company?
Mm-hmm. Have you had any interest in looking into it seems to be the new thing right now, diamonds that are created in laboratories?
Yeah, I follow along with things. I haven't had any companies approach me at all yet. There's within mining, there's coal mining, there's diamonds, there's energy metals. We work with clients in the lithium sector, and then we work with clients in the gold and silver. So we haven't had that opportunity yet, but each thing has its own little challenges, and at the end of the day, it's still a commodity, whether you're growing corn or you're pulling gold out of the ground. It's, what are the economics and what are your costs and what are your profits going to be? And so it's an interesting, I really get into the numbers with clients and have fun kind of looking at this and sort of saying, okay, what's digging around and finding that thread of a story that, wow, this is pretty interesting. But I think that the laboratory diamonds thing is going to be interesting, and I think it's here to stay. But we'll see how it goes down the road.
Okay. Now, you mentioned lithium. Considering the phenomenal growth, or if you will, of battery-operated cars, and I think most of them are lithium battery-driven. How are you involved in that arena?
So one of our clients is a lithium project, and they're awaiting permitting to move forward with construction of the mine. And there's several lithium companies in Nevada. There's also a couple on the East Coast. And you've had politicians talking about, one in particular was talking about their state saying, we want to have every car in the state be an electric vehicle by 2035. Mm-hmm. Great soundbite, makes the headlines, totally not possible. Their staff didn't talk to the mining industry before that. There's not enough identified lithium out there to do that. It's coming forward, and the administration in Washington is moving forward and trying to fast track permitting, but it takes a little bit of time to identify a deposit, make sure that it's economic, which is a huge factor, and then build the mine and get the lithium carbonate or whatever it is into production. So there's going to be some steps to go through here. The electric vehicle takeover is not going to happen as fast as the politicians are talking about, but it's definitely coming.
Well, it sounds like it, because I think General Motors, if I'm not mistaken, has thrown down the gauntlet, said that they plan to be all electric. What is it, about 2025, I believe it might have been, that they put it there?
I don't remember the date, but it's coming, and it's not going to happen by the time they said. Mm-hmm. There's not enough battery materials out there to do that, but they'll make a big dent, and I think you're going to start to see some other companies follow that lead, where they are going to head, and there might be hybrids, or everybody's going to have a different kind of angle on it. GM just announced a huge investment in a lithium development project in northern Nevada, and so you're seeing companies invest in these mining companies to build that. Elon Musk has talked about having his own lithium mine to develop lithium for batteries for Teslas. Whether that happens or not, who knows? But it's definitely a changing landscape for sure.
Well, as I listen to you talk about obviously the electric cars are coming, and they're coming rather quick, it seems to me that might present, or some people might see that as a great opportunity to invest now, because eventually all the cars or trucks are going electric. And by the way, there are some airplanes now that have electric motors in them.
Yeah, I just saw a video a week or two ago of a private plane that was rechargeable, and I know there are boats that are like that, and it's definitely it's not a fad by any stretch. And, I think you're going to start to see some big trucks. Tesla announced near Reno, they're going to be building their truck plant to build electric trucks. And, they've already got 18-wheeler type, big rig trucks that are electric. So I think we're going to see some major changes. To be honest, there's so much news on the electric vehicle front that it's hard to keep up with and, keep up with everything else. But it's fascinating. It's fascinating to watch it and be a tiny part of it.
And that's where I'm going with my next question. It seems to me that where you are in terms of selling the story, if you're telling the story, if you will, about, and let's stick with lithium, that, the future is just about here. Or for some practical, it is here. So, this seems to be an investment opportunity that makes sense for people to get involved with it now before it gets too big, so to speak.
Yeah, it depends on individuals. I was at a mining investment conference in Vancouver last week, and there's early stage companies, there's production where they're actually producing, and those kind of companies, and they pay a dividend. And if you're at an age where you're starting to look down the street and see the retirement signals, an early stage mining company might not be your play. It might be too much risk and too much waiting. But if you're, if you're 30 and you're looking at future things, yeah, this is a great time. And there's so many different ways to invest in the mining industry. I have a very good friend who I've met years and years ago, and turns out when I got into mining, he was starting to invest in it. And he has we talk about it just from his standpoint, and he has investments in companies. He has royalty companies. So there are mining companies that don't actually mine anything. They take streams of revenue off of mining companies. So they're called a royalty company, and that's a different kind of story. Their risk is spread out over multiple companies. You can invest in mining by buying physical gold and storing gold bars towards your retirement in your basement. There's so many different ways to do it, and they're all out there. They're all out there with their own agenda.
Well, considering that you've faced a lot of challenges, my next question is perhaps what is the biggest challenge you've faced as you've had to deal with miners, perhaps in getting people to buy or to make some sort of changes in their behavior to accept, lithium mines or other sorts of mines? What has been your biggest challenge there?
I think, years ago, I worked at a silver company. We operated in Guatemala, and I love Guatemala. It was just the people there are amazing, but Guatemala was a difficult sell, and you try to help people de-risk it so that they can understand it. As it turns out, after I left the company, they actually lost. The government took away their operating permit, and they're still negotiating to try and make that happen. But it's, just to kind of speak generally, I think that the mining industry in the past has had some bad behavior, and responsible mining companies are what we have now. And for the most part, you've got good, solid, good citizens. We care about the earth, and mining people care about the future of the planet. But, I'm kind of reminded of people will talk about not being, they don't like mining, but, we've got a big football game coming up Sunday. Without mining, there's just some guys standing in a parking lot. There's no big silver trophy. There's no stadium. There's no grass. The artificial turf comes from mining. We all are attached to our mobile phones. Without mining, it's 2 cans and a string. So it's mining is. I fell into this by accident, and I absolutely love this career, and I love talking about it.
And I think that's interesting that you've identified so much that comes from mining that we probably don't pay attention to it or have no idea. So part of this I see is education on your part to let people know the benefits from mining, and it's not just gold and silver and things that they might see every day, but there's so much that comes from the ground as a result of mining that perhaps we couldn't live without it.
Yeah, our lifestyle these days, every once in a while I'll run into anti-mining people, and they have their eyeglasses on and their watch and their jeans, and without mining they're wrapped in banana leaves.
Mm-hmm.
But I really, the industry has to do a better job
Mm-hmm.
of holding itself accountable, and I think that we're seeing that now. There's companies are this whole ESG movement has helped with that a lot. Companies are now talking about all of the great things that they do, and the safety of the earth, and all those things are important. And I think they were happening before. They just didn't really talk about it a whole lot.
Well, it seems that the timing is right, because obviously if we talk about the environment being polluted and a lot of other things, but there are also some good things that are happening, such as obviously cars switching over to batteries, for example, and a lot of other things. As I mentioned before, people don't know, but there are airplanes now with the smaller ones with the electric engines, and then some of the newer jets that are minimizing the pollution that they distribute from their jet engines. So a lot of things are happening now, and it seems like this gives you a good platform to be on to talk about mining, because of all of the positive things that it has been doing and is doing now.
Yeah, and I'm really proud to be part of this industry. It's for a guy that started out in journalism. When we were in journalism school, I avoided anything to do with science or ology at the end of it, and it's been an interesting learning curve, that's for sure. But it's a fascinating business.
Mm-hmm. Well, Ira, since you brought this up, are there any things that maybe we have missed as we talked about, particularly your involvement primarily with the mining industry and the public relations that goes along with that?
Yeah, it's funny how you could get a bunch of marketers and PR people in a room and ask them what their most important tool is, and it may take a while to get there, but a company story is really that it's free. It doesn't cost anything. It's sometimes the avenues to tell the story, have a fee, but the company story is what people want to hear. And we live in a world where we're bombarded with information. I mean, certainly now more than ever. And, I remember back when I was an undergrad, they talked about it took 7 impressions to make a brand stick in your brain. And now they're talking about, 700 to 7,000 impressions because there's so many pieces of information coming at us. But a story will connect the dots. It'll connect the heart and the brain. And, a spreadsheet doesn't do that. A spreadsheet just hits the brain. But a good story will generate interest and drive engagement. And we love helping companies tell their stories.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I was about to say. Regardless of what it is, as PR people, we are pitching to the public or otherwise, it's the story that helps it gain traction, and it has to be a very well-developed and delivered story so that people can appreciate the value of the content that's being presented to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, I read a figure, between 25 and 50 times greater impact a story over facts and figures.
Mm-hmm.
And, the more generations that we bring in as consumers, we have a client right now where we're actually going to be working with a vendor on a TikTok campaign. And that's pretty new for my team, but the vendor's a millennial, and this is their wheelhouse, their expertise. And we're going to move forward with them creating some content for this client that will expose them to a new generation.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, first of all, let me thank you for being a guest, because this is an avenue I had not been down before. and glad I had the opportunity to have you on as a guest to share this information with our listeners today. So let me say thank you for being a guest on the Public Relations Review, and to all of my listeners, thank you for listening. And please, if you've enjoyed the show, be sure to give us a great review and perhaps even follow us. But again, my guest today has been Ira Gostin. He is the president of GH Strategies in the great state of Nevada. And once again, Ira, thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you so much.
This podcast is produced by Communication Strategies, an award-winning public relations and public affairs firm headquartered in Nashville, Tennessee. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, this is Peter Woolfolk speaking. Now, first of all, thank you so very much for listening to the podcast. Now, I am very excited to let you know that the podcast is now available on Amazon Alexa. You know the drill. Simply say, Alexa, play Public Relations Review podcast, and she'll take it from there. And again, thank you for listening. And if you enjoy the program, please become a subscriber. Now, on to the podcast.